What problems are you dealing with in your life right now?
Do you feel like giving up? Times are hard and you're not strong. Well, I know the answer for you, and it will lead to real truth. Don't look back to yesterday.
Now there are answers.
Tomorrow's on
Welcome
the
to
way.
Live Prayer.
It's waiting there.
And welcome to Live Prayer. I am Bill Keller. It's good to be with you on this Friday evening. You're watching Live Prayer, where we come to you live and in living color every Monday through Friday, 11 to midnight Eastern Daylight Time. And wherever you may be across this great land of ours, sea to shining sea, border to what was a border for a little while. Thank you for tuning in tonight. And for our friends in other far-off great lands, welcome to you as well. Again, I'm Bill Keller, founder of LivePrayer.com, world's largest interactive Christian website. Reach a little over 2.5 million folks each and every day via the internet. Please check us out online. LivePrayer.com is the web address. And when you get there, don't be shocked. Got nothing to sell you, no advertising, just 22 years of great ministry content. Boy, I can't believe it. Next month, of course, is our anniversary month. 22 years online. My. But it's good to be with you tonight. We've got an action-packed show. Listen, we've had a lot of information this week, a lot of, serious issues that are long-term. And, of course, Monday was the 4th of July holiday, which I don't know why it's Monday because the 4th is Sunday. Well, I do know why. People want that extra day. And then, of course, we had the hurricane coming through Florida on Tuesday, and we had a bunch of power outages, but we got back Wednesday. If you missed Wednesday or Thursday's program, do yourself a favor and watch it. You might even want to rewatch it if you've already seen it, because there is so much information in those two programs, so much critical information, structural type information, okay? And, of course, we simulcast. Our main feed, of course, on this program is on liveprayer.com, our website. That's where the feed originates. It's always there. So if you ever have a problem wherever else you may watch me, you can always go to the website. We're live again Monday through Friday, 11 to midnight. But we also simulcast our live feed on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook page, and our Twitter page. We simulcast live on all those, but as well as on Roku. And welcome to our Roku friends. And you can find all of our old programs on Roku, on Twitter, on Facebook, and YouTube's probably the easiest place because that's all that's there on our YouTube Live Prayer TV page is just the program. So check it out. Again, Wednesday and Thursday this week, critical programs. You might want to get your friends to watch, your family to watch, so they know what's going on. All right, we've got a big one tonight. So let's pray. Let's get into it. We're coming right out of the box with what you need to know as a Christian. Don't forget, I know we talk about a lot of things that don't seem to have anything to do with church, don't seem to have anything to do with the Bible or Jesus. But my friend, like I've told you many times, if you're going to be a soldier and you're going to be on the battlefield, you need to know what the battlefield looks like. You need to know what the enemy is doing. You need to know why they're doing it. So, I mean, when we invaded the coast of France on D-Day, Eisenhower didn't just wake up one morning and say, let's go get a bunch of guys, let's go storm the beaches of Normandy. I mean, there was a lot of planning, a lot of reconnaissance, a lot went into the preparation for that invasion of the beaches of Normandy. So, as Christians, the more informed we are, the better we understand the lay of the land, the better we understand the battlefield that we're fighting on, the more effective we can be. And my friend, it's up to us, okay? God's hand is gone. Deservedly so. I've been warning for 20-some years that this day was coming. But all's not lost. And again, we have the hope of Nineveh. We have the hope of Nineveh. And I don't have time to go into it now, but all you need to do is read the book of Jonah, because Nineveh was a people that were about ready to be crushed by God. but they believed the words of the reluctant prophet Jonah. They repented, and God stayed his hand of wrath and fury, exchanged it for blessings. 120,000 people came to Jesus. And what God did for the people of Nineveh, he will do for the people of the United States if, this is the if we respond like the people of Nineveh. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this night. We're so grateful each night to gather together. We never want to take one of these evenings for granted. Lord, as we come to you tonight, I ask that you watch over us, that you minister to us individually. I lift up all my friends tonight and their families and the needs that they represent tonight and ask those needs be met for the glory of God. We're so grateful for this day, your blessings that you've bestowed upon each of us this day. And now, Lord, open our hearts and minds to hear important information so we can be better informed, so we can better understand how we as your people can take our stand for you in these perilous days. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, I want to start tonight with 1:6. And we've talked about it many nights, obviously, but I want to pull this together because you need to understand 1:6, because 1:6 is the reason that Christians are going to be on the hunt. We are on the hunt to some degree right now. 1:6 is the excuse to come after Christians. So let me put it all in perspective for you real quick. And again, we've got a lot of content tonight, so just hang with me. Again, get this to people you know. Make them watch it. People need to be informed. All right, 1:6, of course, is a reference to the uprising in the Capitol building. And in the aftermath, we've had two separate congressional committees that have looked at this. You've got the FBI, of course, that is involved in looking at 1:6. But Nancy Pelosi wants her own 1:6 commission. Now, it was rightly rejected by the Republicans in the House and the Senate. And upon rejection in the Senate, Pelosi said, fine, I'm still going to put it together because she's got the ability to, because they run the House. So it'll be a House commission. Won't have any senators. And please don't be fooled, because when you heard about, oh, it will be bipartisan, we'll have an equal number of Democrats and Republicans. What they didn't tell you is that the staffing would all be Democrats. And you have to understand how these committees work. I hate to be so blunt, but these congressmen and senators do very little on these committees. It's the staff that does all the work. And the staff that is running a committee basically determines how the committee is going to operate. It's just like the two fake impeachments that they ran. Well, they weren't fake, they were real, but they were both totally bogus. But it was Democratic staff in both of those impeachments that put it all together. Now, in Pelosi's new 1/6 commission, she's going to appoint 8 people, and McCarthy, the House Minority Leader, gets to pick 5. Pelosi picked 7 Democrats from Congress, including people like Schiff, Jamie Raskin, basically the same people that ran the impeachment hoax for the Democrats. And she added a Republican out of her picks, Liz Cheney, which, to be blunt with you, she might as well be a Democrat now. She's a dead woman walking in terms of getting reelected in 2022. Now, McCarthy gets 5. And I said, fine, take your 5. Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You could come up with a couple more. Devin Nunes. But here's the catch. Nancy Pelosi has veto power. In other words, if McCarthy names somebody that Nancy Pelosi doesn't want on that committee, she has the ability to veto that person. For instance, she's not going to let Marjorie Taylor Greene be on that committee. She's not going to let Matt Gaetz be on that committee. She's not going to let Jim Jordan or Devin Nunes on that committee. That's why it's such a joke. Now, understand what this committee is about, please. This is the important thing. It is a total dog and pony show. It's going to be run totally by the Democrats, and the whole purpose is so between now and the midterms in 2022, they can create a political narrative for the media to run on. Remember weeks ago, I explained to you what, narrative engineering is, where they basically, put a narrative together. Whether it's factual or not, that's not the issue. In other words, Russia, that was a narrative engineering job like none other, all right? So the whole purpose of this committee is so they can basically give the press something pretty much on a daily basis that they can keep hammering because don't forget, the narrative that's been engineered by the Democratic Party is that 1/6 was the worst thing to happen in this country since the Civil War. They lie. 5 people died, when in fact, no, only 1 person died, unarmed, 14-year Air Force vet, Ashley Babbitt, who was executed by Capitol Hill Lieutenant Michael Leroy Byrd. Okay? That's the only person that died that day. The quote-unquote insurrectionists, tough to have an insurrection without weapons because we know there were no weapons in the Capitol. Now they're labeling flagpoles and things like that as weapons. That's fine. But as far as firearms, there were none except the firearms that the Capitol Hill police possessed. All right? So the whole purpose of this is to keep this hoax alive. And it does another thing. It continues to give credibility to the FBI, to the intelligence agencies, to the Department of Justice, that the greatest threat to this country is what? White nationalists, white supremacists. More directly, the 75 to 80 million people who voted for Donald Trump, and even more directly, white Christian men. That's what this whole thing is about, to keep that bogus storyline going. Just like they ran with Russia for what? 2.5 years, even though they knew it was total garbage. Now, while they're doing that, don't forget we're in a civil war. Red states, blue states, right? While they're doing that, you've got actual good investigative journalists out there, like a John Solomon, like a Darren Beattie from Revolver News, and some others, Tucker Carlson. They're doing a lot of digging into 1/6. And what we know about 1/6, we know one thing for certain. It was an FBI engineered operation. And there was a handful of violent people, and it turns out the violent people were part of the initial operation put together by the FBI, who, by the way, have not been charged yet. I don't know if you remember earlier on I said look for the charging documents of anybody connected with Antifa or Black Lives Matter, because we know of at least 3 Antifa Black Lives people that were there that day. The video of Ashley Babbitt getting executed was taken by a Black Lives Matter provocateur. So while the media is going to tell you the horrors of 1/6 for the next 18 months to use it politically for the midterms, and the Democrats will give them that narrative that they can engineer. At the same time, you're going to have people who are going to tell you the truth. This is exactly what happened with Russia. While the media was talking Russia for 2.5, 3 years, you had people, again, like Solomon and many others out there that were actually uncovering the truth, and that the whole Russia thing was a hoax, which we know now beyond a shadow of a doubt. We've got John Brennan's handwriting in the summer of 2016, basically stating this was a Hillary Clinton campaign scam to take the heat off of her and her illegal server. That's how Russia started. And they had the full cooperation. This is the scary part. They had the full cooperation of the Obama Justice Department, the Obama FBI, and all of the intelligence agencies. And we've got a very similar thing going on now. So I just want you to understand what's going to be going on, so you're not confused or you don't fall into the trap of, buying any of their garbage, because that's exactly what they're going to shovel your way between now and it's all going to be done by this 1/6 commission that she's appointed. Now, why are they protecting the identity of the executioner of Ashley Babbitt, Lieutenant Michael Leroy Byrd? They've already declared the case is closed. They've exonerated him. It's over. But you're not allowed to say his name. Now, in the last few days, I think on this program, this is probably one of the first national forums where anybody had the guts to tell people who it was. They've known it for months. In the last few days, you've got a couple conservative websites like the Gateway Pundit and Real Clear Investigation. Paul Sperry, who does good work. He did great work on the Russia issue. They are now out with his name. But you still can't say his name in most forums. The media is certainly not going to tell you his name. Why are they? If this was a white officer and Ashley Babbitt was a Black Lives Matter protester, right? You would know everything. You would know the police officer's name, his family. You'd have a map to his house. But they're hiding, but this is how they operate. Do you remember during how the fake Ukraine impeachment started? It was right after the Mueller report had to fizzle out and tell people there was nothing there, and it was all started by an NSA insider who happened to be Joe Biden's Ukraine specialist when he was vice president. His name was Eric Ciaramella. Do you remember how you couldn't say his name? Oh, he's a whistleblower. You can't say his name. You can't say his name. You couldn't say his name because it was all cooked up. And as we know now, the whole Ukraine impeachment was not about Donald Trump. It's about protecting Joe Biden and his boy Hunter. We're going to talk about him a little bit tonight, too, in a minute. But they've swept it under the name, or they've swept Byrd's name under the rug. They've exonerated him, nothing to see here, and you're not allowed to talk about it. Because his life is in danger. Well, what about all those police officers whose lives are in danger? My goodness, you had LeBron James basically put a target on the back of that Columbus police officer when he shot and killed a black woman who was getting ready to knife to death another black woman. Remember that a few months ago? LeBron James with 20-some million Twitter followers. Has he been banned from Twitter for that, by the way? No, I don't think so. You can't say Byrd's name on. You can't say because his life's in danger. Yeah, well. Now, fortunately, Babbitt's family and estate is suing the government, so I'm assuming that it's going to become a public issue very soon. But it's just disgusting how they operate. Now, for the record, and this isn't, see, these things you're not going to hear about out of Nancy's commission. President Trump offered 10,000 National Guard troops 2 days in advance to help protect the Capitol because, again, he was having a big rally. They're expecting hundreds of thousands of people. And Pelosi rejected the offer. The FBI supposedly had intel weeks in advance that there might be some trouble. They didn't even share it with the White House or any of the congressional committees. They sat on it. And of course, that's just further evidence they sat on it because they're the ones that orchestrated this whole thing. At least the beginnings of it anyway. Got the ball rolling. Now, I talked to you the other night about the Capitol Police Department. That is 100% under the control of one human being. And that is the Speaker of the House, who happens to be Nancy Pelosi. And I mentioned to you the other night that for the first time in history, they're actually setting up field offices for the Capitol Police. Initially in Florida and California, they're going to add others. I mean, again, I hate these comparisons. I don't know of another comparison. The Capitol Police have virtually zero congressional oversight. They are immune from FOIA requests. In other words, you can't get documents out of them, okay? They've got total immunity, and they basically answer to one person, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. That's, if you know your world history, that's exactly how the SS came to be. They were a private police force. In addition to the regular, but like I said the other night, we've got FBI field offices all over the country. That's what the FBI is supposed to be doing. Her excuse for the field officer, well, we want to be better equipped to handle regional threats. We got 60, 70 some field officers of the FBI all over the country. That's what they're there for. That's what they're there for. Now, I'll tell you something you're not going to get out of this committee. And I don't know how they're going to get it, but somehow some of these defense attorneys for some of the people that are in charge need to be able to access this. That's 14,000 hours of Capitol Hill surveillance video from 1/6. The 14,000 hours start about 10 in the morning, a couple hours before the breach started, right? And goes right through like 6 o'clock. 2 hours after it was all over. So you've got basically 8 hours of every inch of the Capitol is covered by surveillance cameras. There are 14,000 hours of surveillance video that the department or that the FBI refuses to release, that Nancy Pelosi controls and refuses to release. So, and here's the problem with the commission. It's all coordinated by Pelosi, so she's not going to be under oath. She needs to answer. Why did you reject the president's offer of 10,000 National Guard troops 2 days before just to have them on hand at the Capitol? Why did FBI Director Wray not tell anybody about the supposed intel from weeks in advance that there might be trouble? You're not going to hear any of those questions even asked. You're certainly not going to hear the committee demand that the 14,000 hours of surveillance video be released. And in the meantime, to just make this all look legitimate, you've got probably, 150, 200 people that have never had a criminal record in their life, that are in 23-hour lockdown and have been for months and months now. And here's the thing. You've got people in jail who have no record. They can't get bond because they're so dangerous. No record. They aren't even charged with doing anything violent. Yet no bail. Yeah, you can murder somebody in Chicago. You'll be out on a no bond tag within a couple hours. Or you could rob a bank in New York City and you're out back on the streets. You can rob another one within a couple hours. This is not our country, my friend. I'm sad to say it is our country. This is not what our country is supposed to look like. There's a gay choir out of San Francisco. I'm sure that shocks people. The only reason I'm mentioning is they have a new song that they've just released. It's called Parents, We're Coming for Your Kids. I've heard the song. It's kind of a nice song, but it's got pretty chilling lyrics to it because they flat out state, parents, we're coming for your kids. I know you've heard me say this before. I'm sorry. Back in the early days of live prayer in the 2000, 2001, I was warning parents right and left. I said, you better watch out for your kids because they are trying to move a lot of this radical homosexual agenda into the schools. You know, they're working on the entertainment industry to try to mainstream it. They're going to be working it into the schools. Oh, that's never going to happen, Bill. That's it. No, no, no. Our schools won't do that. Yeah. Well, that's exactly what they did. Very successfully. And they're doing the same thing now to try to legitimize people with a mental health condition who don't even know what gender they are. But I give this gay choir in San Francisco credit. At least they're finally being honest. They don't have to hide it anymore. Parents, we're coming after your kids. Oh, and speaking of kids, if you go to school in the Chicago public school system, chances are you aren't going to learn anything. But if you're 10 years or older, you can get free condoms. I couldn't make this stuff up if I sat here one day and tried to come up with the most outrageous things I could think of to say. I couldn't even remotely come up with what's really happening. I couldn't. Yeah. Chicago Public Schools, free condoms for kids 10 years and older. I guess the 9-year-olds need to wait a year, right? By the way, we've got a bunch of human rights groups that are making a lot of noise about the Uyghurs in China. Rightly so. If you've been part of this program, you know I've been making noise about that a good 3 years ago, long before it was a topic that people even discussed or most people even knew about. And but you've got a lot of, but the globalists, which of course are in bed with the CCP, they're telling these human rights groups, they're saying, you know, just leave China alone on these human rights abuses. We need to work with China on climate change. And we don't want China upset. So just kind of give them a pass on the human rights violations. Don't mention that. You know, we need to come together with China over climate change. So just kind of leave them alone. Part of Biden's dream, if he ever gets some things through the Senate, which again, I haven't talked about for a few nights. I gave it a rest for a couple nights, but I can't stop because it's the most important issue. I told you, last summer, good 5 months before the election, that if God allowed Joe Biden to win the White House, if God allowed the Democrats to take the Senate and the House, here is exactly what they're planning to do, and everything I told you 6 months before the election has come true. And I told you then, it's probably the first time you may even thought about it or heard about it, I said the key to all this is the Senate filibuster. It's got to stay intact because while there can be great damage done to our country, it's not irreversible. The Senate filibuster goes away, it's over. First of all, you're never going to have another Republican House, Senate, or president in your lifetime, probably your children's lifetime. Like California, we will become a one-party nation. And they will pass every one of their globalist fantasies, you know, ripping the Second Amendment, statehood for D.C. and Puerto Rico, pack the court, all their green climate dreams, all the things that they've dreamed about. Well, one of the things that they are doing, and again, you've got to put some of this in context. Well, you got to put it all in context. Joe Biden makes no decisions. Barack Hussein Obama makes the decisions. That's why I tell you Joe Biden is an avatar. You know, an avatar doesn't do anything on its own. It's got to be operated by somebody. Well, the Joe Biden avatar is operated by Barack Hussein Obama. And this is right up his alley. One of Joe Biden's plans is to get 90,000 additional IRS agents on the street. Why 90,000? So they can go after people for tax avoidance and start going after people right and left. Now, this is another great example of how I never doubted it was Obama pulling the strings. Remember his first big scandal? Came very early in his presidency as they were trying to get the Obamacare thing through. We had a citizen uprising back in 2009. Remember what that was? The Tea Party, right? Well, Obama weaponized the IRS to basically deny the Tea Party groups nonprofit status. That's important because for them to raise money as a charity, you have to have nonprofit status, or the donors can't get a tax write-off. Now, some people are going to donate anyway. Yeah, that's true. But you know, a good portion of the donors want that write-off. They don't mind giving you $1,000 as long as they can take it off their taxes. It's give it to this organization or give it to Uncle Sam. They're happy as long as they get the write-off. Well, his first scandal, his first scam that he ran as president was weaponizing the IRS, led by a lady who you may remember. Here's some trivia. Lois Lerner, remember her? His first scandal was weaponizing the IRS, led by Lois Lerner, to deny Tea Party groups their nonprofit status. So for him to now weaponize the IRS to go after, and trust me, they won't be going after people who voted for Joe Biden. I promise you that. And how will they know that? They've got databases, my friend, that you can't imagine. Speaking of the IRS, just a little side note, going back to Pelosi. Turns out her husband made millions, I'm talking $12, $15 million in the last year on stocks he just happened to decide to buy within weeks of the House passing legislation regarding those companies. Isn't that amazing? The prescience he had to buy a stock that just weeks later, the House passed legislation to that affected those stocks. Tens of millions of dollars he made this year doing that. I mean, you almost think he was sleeping with the Speaker of the House. Can't make this stuff up, folks. All right. The government, of course, is fear-mongering, threatening citizens because of the vaccination. And I find it really ironic. As they're fear-mongering people about the vaccination, at the same time, they're going to let in this year approximately 1 million illegal aliens. None of them are going to be checked for the Chinese flu. They're shipping them all over the country. Okay, so while they're so concerned about, you know, the COVID-19, while they're so worried, at the same time they're bringing people in, and they say right now in these facilities about 25% of these people are positive. Flying them all over the country. I mean, it's just... Governor Baby Butcher Cuomo, he's now going to sue gun manufacturers. State of New York is. He says gun violence is a health crisis. He says we're going to sue the gun manufacturers so we can, you know, curtail the gun violence. That's not going to curtail. Number one, good luck. He's going to have he's going to have a legal morass on his hand trying this, but it's not going to work. But if I could tell Governor Baby Butcher something, the problem is not the gun manufacturers. The problem isn't even the guns. The problem is your policies. Like an idiot, you put out this no bond deal so violent criminals can commit the most heinous act and they're back on the street in an hour. It's not the gun, it's not the gun manufacturers, it's your garbage policies. That's where this crime is coming from. It's your prosecutors, pumped up by Soros, who aren't charging people with crime. You know, while they're holding people in these DC gulags for basically trespassing, that's what most of these people are being charged with at the Capitol. While they've got them in solitary confinement, which is by a lot of standards really inhumane treatment, okay? For months and months now, okay? You can commit a major felony in New York, and you're back out on the street in an hour. And here's another thing. Out of all those riots we saw last summer that the media didn't want to talk about, and people said they were just friendly and peaceful protests that cost $1 billion in property damage, 1,200 some law enforcement officers injured during all that, millions and millions and millions of dollars of merchandise looted, right? I think out of all that, you had about 10 or 12 cases that are actually still existing. In the meantime, they had over 1,000. What happened to all those? Oh, that's right, they dropped them all. New York just dropped over 100 cases of people who committed violence last summer in New York. Looting, arson, attacking law enforcement. Case drop, case drop. The crime problem in New York and around this country has nothing to do with guns, gun policies, gun laws. It has everything to do with the idiotic policies that these places have put, into action that makes being a criminal. Hey, these are the best days to be a criminal since Bonnie and Clyde, Babyface Floyd, back in those days. This Hunter Biden art thing, they just don't give up. They don't give up, do they? Hunter Biden is now an artist, and he's putting a bunch of his artwork up for sale. And the White House actually brokered a deal with an art dealer in New York, so they won't know the name of the buyer and they won't know the amount that was purchased. Well, that's a lie right off the top, because at some point they're going to have to write Hunter Biden a check for all of his art that was purchased, a check that he's then going to have to pay taxes on, whatever. So he's going to know right away that his idiotic art, and I know art's subjective. Some guy just sold an invisible vase or something for $18,000. So it's a goofy world, I get it. But this is just pure pay to play. I mean, it's unbelievable. But the bottom line is, he's going to get a check at some point from the art. And if his check's for like $2 million, he's going to know his garbage art brought $2 million. Somebody, a collection of people, oh, by the way, this art dealer that they're using in Soho, he specializes in Chinese clients. I mean, again, you can't make this stuff up. Can't make it up. Can't make it up. We have a global problem, by the way. I mentioned to you before. And there's very little babies coming into the world these days. And we talked about it in regards to the United States, but I mean, this is a global issue. It's happening all over the world. This is probably the lowest number of babies that are born in a year for decades now. But you know what? I'll tell you people who aren't upset. It's the globalists. Because don't forget, globalists are population, are depopulation adherents. Okay? That's why they're all down for abortion. That's why they push euthanasia. Let's cut down the population, because the more population, the more resources. So the globalists of the world are always depopulation adherents. But now, I know people may say, well, what does it matter how many babies we have? Well, at some point you need people to, man the state. You need people to fly planes. You need people to be doctors. You need people to be nurses. You need people to drive trucks. You need people to stock shelves. You need people to be architects. You need people to be engineers. You need people to be lawyers. You need people to run things. And they're already China actually, this is one of their major internal problems right now. And that's because they slaughtered 400 million babies over the last few decades. But they've got a real population issue. I mean, you need people to run things. And we're coming against that right now, coming out of the lockdowns. We talked about last night. People aren't just not going back to work. They're just not going back to work at all, ever. And you've got businesses out there that are paying like $1,000 bonuses just for people to come on board. So, all right. Something broke this morning. Came out of the CDC, and I saw it and I said, if you were watching a few weeks ago, I've been warning you parents I started warning you last year about when schools open. But I've really been highlighting the fact that I know you've got the whole war with the curriculum, and you've got to keep fighting that war, because that's not going to stop. Whether it be the critical race theory garbage, or it's the hypersexualization curriculum that's being pushed from K through 12. Okay, you got to stay on top of that. But your biggest battle's coming up in a few weeks. That's when your kid goes back to school, and that's when your school says if you're not vaccinated, you're not coming back to school. Now, I believe that the schools are going to have a legal problem with this, in terms that it's still an experimental stage. And I think legally that might carry the day. But here's the new CDC guidelines. For kids that go back to school that haven't been vaccinated, you got to wear a mask. Vaccinated, no mask required. No, not vaccinated, wear a mask. I mean, you don't need to be a genius to see what a nightmare this is going to be when you got a class of 30 kids and you've got 20 of them that are sitting there with no mask, and you've got 10 of them with masks on. I mean, you might as well just, put a scarlet letter on their forehead, right? Especially kids, and the way kids are. Kids can be cruel. Kids can be real cruel. I told you last year, early on in this, once they started the lockdown, I said, they're never going to just let this go. And of course, we're having more conversations today about a third jab, an annual booster for the Chinese flu. They're not just going to let this go, folks. Now, I've been excited to tell you in recent months that the Catholic Church, or a part of the Catholic Church, some higher ups at the bishop level, have really been public about Catholics like Joe Biden, Pelosi, other politicians who support the killing of innocent babies and their ability to take communion. Well, in the last few weeks, remember when the parents, those viral videos first started, the parents getting up at the school board meetings and, just giving it to them about, race theory and all the different things, right? I told you that. I said, that's good. They need to stick on it. But that's not going to go unnoticed, and that's not going to go unchallenged. And as we spoke earlier this week, now you've got a lot of pushback. Well, you're starting to get a lot of pushback now from the liberal wing of the Catholic Church. They're becoming very vocal. They're banging the war drums, and they're trying to get rid of some of these, especially at the priest level, these people who are very outspoken that, these politicians, especially at the level of Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, who claim to be Catholics, but have a 100% voting record of slaughtering innocent babies. I mean, if the church is going to have any legitimacy, it's got to take a stand. And you've got a lot of now pushback from different elements, some of it Vatican level, against these priests and monsignors and bishops that have been vocal about, these people should not be taking communion as long as this is, how they are voting on this critical issue of life. So that's why I keep one of the big picture items I've been trying to help you understand for weeks now is there's a civil war going on in this country. It's not like the Civil War of 160 years ago where, you had men, battling on clay and sod with rifles. No, this is a different kind of battle, but it's every much a civil war. And like I've shared with you, the difference between this Civil War and that Civil War, the biggest difference is the fact that 160 years ago, this was still a country of faith, obviously deeply divided over the issue of slavery, but it was still a country that, had faith on both sides. On both sides. Obviously, those who were, trying to hold on to the slavery tradition must have missed that part of the Bible. But overall, it was still a Christian nation. And I believe, without any hesitation, that's the only reason this nation wasn't destroyed during those years. The difference now is we've got a new civil war going on. It's just as much a civil war as it was 160 years ago. It's just it's in a different form. But the problem we've got today is we're not a nation of great faith anymore. We've got, leading up to the pandemic, we had a good 2.5 generations. The vast majority never even been to church. We were in the process of going dark before the pandemic, like Europe is dark. I told you late in 2019, even before the pandemic, we're no longer a Christian nation. We're not far, but just sheer numbers, there's more of them than there are of us now. Not by much, but they're in the majority. And then you go through the pandemic, and then it was clear months in that God was judging this country because it was, if you remember SARS and MERS and Ebola and all those, we were online for all those. I went back, I did devotionals on all those at the time. They were all potential global pandemics, but they just kind of, by the grace of God, fizzled out. This one didn't fizzle out. And that's just more evidence to me, like I told you last night, that this was not an accident. It was very purposeful. By the way, if you missed the first 30 minutes of last night, please go watch it. Serious. It's about what China's up to now, that by the time you realize it, it's going to be too late. There's all indications now that China was actually cooking this up in the last couple months of 2019. Didn't really hit us in the world until, the first, 30, 40 days of 2020. One piece of evidence, they were already working on a vaccine in 2019. How could they be working on a vaccine in 2019 for something that supposedly just was an accident? So make sure you see the first 30 minutes of last night's program. Very important. If you saw it last night, see it again, pass it on, okay? Just like I want you to pass tonight's program on. Okay, we've had just a packed 3 days and a lot of information. I pray you get some rest this weekend, do something enjoyable with your family. Find a church service, please. By the way, if you need a church service to go to or just to supplement your existing service, if you go to my website, liveprayer.com, go all the way to the bottom of the homepage, you'll see a link down there, Live Prayer Church. It's about a 35, 40-minute service, and I pray it'll be a blessing to you. But we're going to wrap it up for the week, and before we leave, though, if you've never made a decision for Christ, I want to give you that opportunity before we leave for the week. Listen, we're in a war. We're in a war for this nation as it exists, but the real war is literally for the soul of this nation. And at this point, it just depends on whether enough men and women of God are going to stand up and help lead this nation back to the Lord and His truth. And I pray every day that history finds us faithful in these grave moments. I really do. If you've never made a decision for Christ, though, because when this journey is over, each one of us will come to our own end at some point. At that moment, you're going to stand before God, and the only thing that matters, do you have a relationship with Christ? And if you don't, but you want one, pray with me now. Dear Lord, I come to you tonight, asking you to forgive me of my sins. I confess tonight, Lord, I'm a sinner. I repent. I turn from my sins. I turn to you. Tonight, I believe in my heart. I confess with my mouth that Jesus is my Lord and my Savior. I surrender my life to you tonight, Lord. I give my life to you tonight, Lord. Use me for your glory. From this moment on, I will live for you. In Jesus' name I pray. And my friend, if you prayed in a minute, the Bible says you're saved, not because you uttered some words. They were just a verbal guide for what you're doing in your heart by faith. I've got a book I'll send you. Won't cost you anything. Drop me an email, bkellerliveprayer.com. If you need prayer for anything, please don't hesitate to email me, bkellerliveprayer.com. All right, get to church this weekend. Do something fun with your family. Rest, enjoy. We're in the summer months, so maybe going to a park or a lake or something. Just have some fun this weekend. Take the pressure off. Leave the world behind for a few hours, and Lord willing, everything is pointing. I will be here Monday night. Wow, Bill's going to be there Monday night because we're going to have a lot to start working on next week. So, love and care about you so much. Have a great weekend. Lord willing, see you 11 o'clock Monday. God bless.
What problems are you dealing with in your life right now?
Do you feel like giving up? Times are hard.